Hello, it's the Autoweek Podcast. I'm Rory Carroll from Autoweek Magazine, here with Mike Pryson.
From Autoweek Magazine, welcome.
Jimmy Pelizzari.
Hello.
Jake Lingeman.
That's me.
And Wesley Wren.
Hi.
Here with another, actually the first of a series of podcasts. We're going to cover a little bit of motorsports. We're going to cover a little bit of what's happening in car culture. Do a great interview with Shirley Muldowney, so make sure you listen for that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been driving and where we've been traveling lately. So first we're going to get into motorsports. Mike, tell us what's going on.
Hey, I just want to talk about the biggest news of the year, and it's only April. We may have the story of the year with Fernando Alonso in Formula One deciding he's going to forego the Monaco Grand Prix, which is their big event of the year, to race the Indianapolis 500. And that obviously sent a lot of shockwaves on both sides of the pond, as it were. And a lot of people are wondering how he's going to fare in the 500. History says he'll do quite well. I don't know. It's been a while since Fernando Alonso's been competitive in a race. We'll see what he does this May.
Yeah, I read a really I'll say it was a bad take by a respected and we've all unleashed a bad take or two on the world, and I read one.
Not a hot take, but a cold take.
A
frigid take.
A real stinker.
Stinky take.
Of Jenna Fryer for the AP writing that this does not matter and no one should care. This is like basically the point of it was this does nothing for the long-term health of IndyCar. Who cares? And then there was a bit about Fernando being let down by his Honda engine in his Formula One car, and therefore would also be let down by the Honda engine, which is a totally different engine in his Indy car. Anyway, bad take. Everybody gets a mulligan, but it's a little. To me, it was like, this dream team, boy. I don't know if having Michael Jordan and Larry Bird on the same team really does anything for the strength of amateur basketball. It just seemed kind of like. Anyway, it just seemed like this will be fun. It adds another dimension to what otherwise would have been the 101st running of the Indy 500. I mean, what do you guys think?
I loved Alonso's quote. I think it was in this most recent issue of Autoweek. He said, I want to be seen as the best driver in the world, best racing driver in the world. I can either win more championships than Michael Schumacher, which probably isn't going to happen, or I can race in all these different series and try to log a win in each of these different series. So I think that's what his plan is
And I think
this upcoming race.
It's great that you get to see that. I mean, now IndyCar, it was really just something for the States, and now you're going to have an entirely different audience. You'll have international people following along and genuinely interested in who wins the Indy 500.
And I think it was cool, too. It's like kind of a throwback. In the old days, the F1 guys, or, it was like, this is the Triple Crown, right? You wanted to win Le Mans, you wanted to win at Indy, and you wanted to win at Monaco. And I think, obviously, you can't race Monaco.
It's a busy month.
Yeah,
a busy month or two, that's for sure.
That's too much of a twofer. Even no matter what helicopter you have, you're not doing that. But
we checked. It is a 12-hour flight, pretty much.
Yeah,
From,
Bryson was gonna give it a shot, but But anyway, I think this is any racer's resume. An Indy 500 win is still meaningful, and it's more meaningful when you see guys like Fernando or coming across to go and try to win one of these things.
Well, the thing that's going to be real interesting, though, he admits he's never been in an Indy car. He's never raced in an oval, on a high-speed oval like this. So this is a totally different animal. I mean, we talked about Rossi won last year as a former F1 driver. He won the first time he saw the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but he had been in an Indy car several times in a couple races and a lot of times in testing. Alonso's coming over a little bit behind the eight ball in that respect, experience-wise. It's going to be really interesting to see how fast he does pick it up. Everybody says greatest driver in the world, a lot of things, in his favor, but it's still going to be interesting, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. If he comes out, qualifies 20th, and finishes 25th, and goes back, to F1 with his tail between his legs, people are going to say, yeah, it wasn't much of a big deal. Now, if he runs in the top 10 or top 5 all day, Kurt Busch a couple years ago came over from NASCAR, first time he'd ever been in an IndyCar, finished 6th, and opened up a lot of eyes. A great driver, probably can run this race.
Well, even then, that only serves to benefit the IndyCar drivers, who are generally viewed as being a second-tier driver to a Formula One driver. But if they can go out and they can beat Fernando Alonso, no problem, and he is in 25th or 20th.
If he shows up and is dominant, that's bad for IndyCar.
Yeah, then it's bad.
Yeah.
But if he isn't, then it's very good for them.
But it's all, I mean, how much of it is equipment versus how much of it is driver? I mean, right now everybody says Alonso is one of the greatest drivers in the world. Then why is he finishing 18th every week?
The car won't finish.
Exactly.
So the equipment's failing. So.
No, the equipment's not failing. He's finishing races. He's just not competitive right now. I don't care how good a driver he is. The same thing could happen to him at Indianapolis. I mean, any given day, you don't know what's going to be going wrong with your car. And
didn't he have engine trouble this past race?
He DNF'd. But I think that the car it's totally apples to oranges. You have two, in IndyCar there are two types of cars, and both of them are capable of winning this race. In Formula One, there are obviously cars that no matter who the driver is are not going to be competitive. But I think, back to your point earlier, I think there's no pressure for him. I think if he comes in and doesn't finish well, it's like, okay, I've never been in IndyCar before. If he comes in and finishes really, really well, then I think you can say, okay, you have a case for being, one of the best drivers in the world. It's almost like he's got nothing to lose.
Right, the pressure's on the IndyCar guys. Because if they beat him, it's like you're supposed to beat him. It's a no. But if they lose to him, then that's a big deal.
Right. This is like why your junior college team won't play the best high school team in your area, because if they lose,
there's nothing to gain. Nothing to gain.
It's a lose-lose.
When Alexander Rossi won last year's Indianapolis 500, though, I don't think any of the IndyCar drivers walked away saying, "Oh, we got beat by a better driver." That was just one of those fluky things. Rossi led one lap all day. It was the last lap, basically. He led the last two, I guess.
If you're going to lead a lap.
But it wasn't because he was running.
You had to pick one.
It was not because he was running with the leaders all day. It was because everybody else came into pit over the last 10 laps, and he fortunately won the.
I mean, he was still in a position to.
Oh, no question.
To be there at the end.
But like I said, I don't think the IndyCar drivers are walking away from that race saying, "Oh man, those F1 drivers are so much better than us."
Well, no, and I think that's a hard case to make if you look at it really, how much of being an F1 versus IndyCar is who you know and who your dad is and what kind of money you're bringing to the table and what pedigree you have, how you grew up in the sport. I would caution anyone from going to say, that the Formula One drivers are in a world of their own. I think a lot of that is myth. It's kind of like the Bernie Eccleston thing. I just don't. Like I said, I would caution anybody from saying, it is an impossible. It's like, who's the best athlete, and it's like, okay, what sport? You know what I mean? Like, it's an entirely different skill set, different cars, different. Bo. Probably.
Well, right, like this. I mean, those sports car guys. If you're competing with cars going 60% of the same speed, at Le Mans, you got cars going 60% of the speed, 100%
totally
speed.
Different.
That's a different skill set than oval racing in an IndyCar or road racing or street racing.
But I think
circuit racing.
I think the one thing about this thing for Fernando is I think if you want to make a case for who's the best athlete, who's the best driver, the way to make that case is, okay, I've won a Formula One championship, I've won at Indy, I've won at Le Mans, I've won it. That's how you do it. You go
right, a race of champions trophy is not exactly the same as winning the big three.
Yeah, fun to watch, but not exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah, you guys remember back in the 80s, and we used to have that International Race of Champions.
Wes doesn't remember.
I think only you remember that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. But those were great. I mean, they would bring in guys from all disciplines to race in basically stock cars at NASCAR tracks, and that was fascinating entertainment. And they were purpose-built for this race. They were all identically equal.
And that I would love to see again.
That was really, really cool. But
what about we get the best drivers in the world, put them in IROC Camaros, and
that's what it was.
That's basically what
IROC
it was.
stands for.
I know, but
you weren't born yet, Wesley.
Yeah. No,
there were a lot of cool ideas back in the day.
Sure. But we can still take IROC Camaros and make it happen. No maintenance on them.
They're cheap.
They find the best.
Right. No prep. Just the only IROC.
The driver has to actually do the prep.
The driver finds the car, buys the car, does the prep, and they race it.
Well, let's just do the Autoweek IROC over at Gingerman. We'll just invite all these guys over and set up a couple cars.
100%. I'm 100% in for that.
And then we'll stick in the editors too. And
let's not do that.
We don't want it to be unfair.
That's my home course. I could put up a good time over there.
That course before.
Jake's clocked what? 2,000-3,000 laps.
Needless to say, guys, it's gonna be an interesting month of May, and that's just what Indianapolis needed, because there was a lot of talk about okay, what can we do to top the 100th, because it was such an incredible show, and that was the first and only sellout in the history of the Speedway last year. Now people say, well, yeah, but there weren't as many people as back in the day. No, but it was the first time they'd ever actually stopped selling tickets because of they did set a capacity for the the infield and the grandstand.
And it was crazy. I mean, I've never been at a motorsports event like. You look up and down that grandstand, and it is packed.
Yeah, and again,
the infield is packed. It was crazy.
Yeah, how crazy is it going to be this year? I don't know. All I can tell you is last year, I booked a room 2 months before the race, and I stayed in Bloomington, which is 50 miles away. I just booked my room last week for this year's Indy 500. I'm 6 miles away. I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I mean, obviously last year was the 100th, so that's big.
That's a little,
and maybe it'll get a little boost from Alonso coming in now. Now that he just announced it.
But I think to look for a sellout every year. That's a lot of people. But I think obviously this IndyCar is in a renaissance, maybe on the verge of a golden era. I don't think interest in open wheel racing in the United States, whether it be kart or IndyCar or whatever, has never been higher in my
not interested in kart these days.
Well, I'm saying since the days of kart, it's never been as buzzed about or as big as it is right now. I mean, I think we're in an era, we're beginning an era where IndyCar has some real momentum and could become a very, very big deal again. People are going to the races. We're obviously super engaged as fans watching it. The racing product is fantastic. So, does it have to sell out every year? I don't know. I think they're IndyCar is doing a lot of the right things, and I think if it really, I think Fernando coming is a sign of this kind of renewed interest in
and respect for it.
Exactly.
Well, they've kind of gotten their their shit together, and now it's kind of more of a respected series.
Yeah.
Ultimately, IndyCar's biggest deal is still the Indy 500 and all the other races in their series. Like this week they're in Alabama for the Barber Motorsports Park, and then next week they're in Phoenix. Those races aren't going to draw flies on TV. And then they're hoping in May to flip the switch for the two races down there. They got the Grand Prix, the road course, and then followed by the Indy 500. Both expected to be good draws, good attendance, and all that. But then again, they'll fall right off probably for Belle Isle the week after the Indy 500 when they come here to Detroit.
I think outside of last year when there was a tremendous amount of rain for Belle Isle, I think usually Belle Isle is a pretty well-attended race weekend. I think certainly meets the expectations of the organizers in the series.
Yeah, I don't know if it sells out or what it would take to sell it out, but it seems to fill up. That's for sure. When you're out there on race day,
it's not
full.
Again, last year was torrential downpour. I'm surprised they even had racing last year, but I
guess I'm still talking more about the TV audience. On Belle Isle on Sunday, the best Sunday attendance is in the low 30s.
What kind of nerd is watching TV on weekends anyway?
Well,
I don't own a TV.
Yeah, it's old people.
That's another issue.
I wanted to say one more thing on this. Like Rory said, it's an amazing sight to see. And if you've been to a college football game, you've seen 100,000 people in one stadium, and you're like, holy shit, this seems like a lot of people. This is double, possibly almost triple that, which is insane to think about.
Yep.
I spent 40 minutes in traffic just trying to get to the south side. Last year, the Indianapolis 500.
40 minutes.
You got to get the police escort.
It's the only way to
police
travel.
escort
all
the way.
Yeah.
Get the police escort. Anyway, outside of the motorsport world, what else is going on?
All right, listen, a lot of big news this week. Shanghai Auto Show, huge. Dodge Demon, 840 horsepower, Cherokee Trackhawk, driverless cars using Grand Theft Auto for their AI research. But obviously the most important thing is Fast and Furious 8, which me and Wes just saw last night.
The fate of the Furious.
The fate of the Furious. I'm going to go ahead and put it up in my top 3, maybe 4 Fast and Furious movies. Wes, where would you put it?
Probably easily top 5.
We spent 15
How many
minutes.
are there? There are 8.
The top 4 are pretty close.
We spent 15 minutes during the credits breaking it down, and then 30 more minutes back at home looking for plot holes, and we found none. So it seemed about perfect.
There are some things that are suspect, such as some quick dry clothing. An odd name selection, not to spoil anything.
The first race in Cuba, Vin Diesel wins.
Hey, spoiler
The
alert.
first race, this is the first 5 minutes. Vin Diesel wins the race in a piece of shit car in reverse, going faster than the other guy in a built new car.
Super
They
fast.
stole that. They stole that from Herbie the Love Bug.
Once
I
it-
saw
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Lindsay Lohan did the
this
same
is just a
thing.
Herbie
That front
reboot. Yeah.
doghouse must have been held on by Zeus fasteners.
Was
the
it-
way
was it-
that
all right.
Dominic Toretto rips it all.
Did it have the number 53 on the side?
Yeah,
It did
was
not.
it a Beetle?
Oh, okay.
Listen, no. More importantly than what you guys thought of the movie, obviously this is probably the most important cultural phenomenon of the 21st century. I would say that's probably
Wow.
fair to say.
Sure. It
It'd be
outgrows
like-
Star Wars.
Yeah,
It was the biggest worldwide opening weekend ever.
and that I think is a really, obviously if you want to talk about, obviously car culture isn't as important as it used to be. I mean, I think you open a movie like this and it's the biggest movie ever. People just don't care about cars and car culture anymore. I think that's an easy conclusion.
Teens don't like cars.
Yeah, kids.
Well, so who's your crowd? Who's at this movie?
It's all
Everybody.
55-year-old guys in
Right, it's not,
in
right.
Hawaiian shirts and flip-flops,
joking
driving
aside,
their
it's literally
55
everybody.
Chevys, listening to Surf and Bird.
Right? No, it is literally everybody. Me, West.
They have the
and-
little kids in the parking lot, and they're like leaning up against the bumper.
I did
bumper
see a few
crying.
crybabies in the theater. A few crybaby dolls.
Yeah,
Statham, my
buddy.
favorite. I mean, I can't even say thespian. My favorite thespian is Jason Statham. He's just fantastic in this movie. He comes to the good side, which we've seen in the previews. I mean, are we not spoiling this? I mean, this is
Well,
gonna.
full blown. If you're
doesn't
listening to
matter.
this, it's been a
It
week
doesn't
since
matter.
it's come out.
You're not, you
Full-blown
can tell.
spoilers.
You could give an entire plot rundown. It's not gonna.
Statham comes
It's not gonna
back.
ruin the movie.
Owen Shaw, Statham's brother from Six, that we thought may or may not have died, comes back as a good guy. These guys are good guys. Hobbs, Statham, the Owen brother, they're all boys again. Obviously, we don't see any Brian. We do have a little Brian talk, which
I missed conveniently.
That's right. Wes went to the
What were
bathroom
you do-
when
Went to the ba-
Can't sit through a movie.
I drank
drank a
4
ton of pop.
ounces of slushy. Basically during the opening credits. Believe it or not, slushy does not hydrate you.
no, it does not.
But I was still
Overhydrated.
thirsty.
The one Paul Walker / Brian O'Connor note we got was Tyrese saying when something happened, he said, "Oh, Brian would know what to do," and then Letty says, "We said we weren't going to call Brian. Him and Mia are like living their life. So like that.
Wait a minute, so they're still alive in the movie.
In the movie, they're still alive. Yeah, yeah.
But
Nice.
conveniently, at the end where they're having their post heist
Right.
party or
And this
post
was a little weird.
post adventure party or whatever, because they're not a heist.
We all have one of those.
Yeah, whatever.
Every movie
They
do.
don't invite their good friend Brian and Maria, but
Mia.
Mia, whatever. I forgot
Dom's
the name.
sister.
I'm
Dom doesn't
sorry.
invite his sister
It's been
to
a long
the-
day. But Dom's illegitimate child is named after Brian, as though Brian's dead.
Which is
It's
really
strange.
weird. I mean, he could have named him Paul, which would have been one way to do it. Or he could have named him Hector, which would have been fine too. But Brian, is he supposed to be dead in the movies or not? I mean,
Why Hector?
The end of just any random. It could be Phil. I'm just
All right.
naming
Final
random
thoughts on the Fast 8 movie.
names. Fantastic. Go
Obviously,
see it.
most important cultural phenomena of the 21st century.
I gotta say, we can spend a whole podcast on this. Those movies and the video games of the last 10, 15 years, the driving video games, are responsible for a huge amount of younger people getting back into car culture again. Because, like I said, this movie's the biggest thing ever. Video games, obviously, $1 billion industry, and like the new Gran Turismo's coming out, Forza, Project Cars, all this new stuff coming out. I think this is what's keeping it alive.
I mean, we saw recently Google released a brilliant
Jeez.
the social rejects at Google. The two conclusions were that if you want to be cool, you have to buy Google products, spend time on YouTube.
That's convenient. It's weird
It's
how it came out like that.
I mean, amazing coincidence.
Serendipity.
But the other conclusion was that cars and automotive were bigger than jobs/money.
Automotive is what they actually wrote.
It said automotive, but it was ranked ahead of jobs/money. And I think if there's anything that can speak to the popularity of car culture, just it's bigger than money. That's bigger than the undergirding principle of our entire society.
The principal factor in purchasing of car.
Right.
Automotive products.
It's bigger. Automotive is bigger. Anyway, okay. So,
but what was the best mobility solution though, as per Google?
Shoes.
Tennis shoes. Yeah,
we
basketball shoes.
we got shoes. Shoes look like a fam, right? That's I think
lit AF.
The shoes. The lit shoes look like a fam, and they're ready for a roast. So
Squad.
We're looking at ones, some dunks, some Jordans.
Anyway.
This is the way to get around.
SB Janoskis. We got. Shoe talk.
That's the other coming soon from Autoweek, the shoe cast.
Yeah. We actually it's us casting shoes out of aluminum.
Okay, so what the hell are we talking about now? I think right now we're gonna move on to.
I think we have an interview.
An incredible interview that we recorded.
She hates that
recently with Shirley Muldowney. Coming out of that, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're driving now, where we're traveling to, and what we have going on in our personal lives. When did you realize that that basically drag racing would work as your career? So what was the moment, or what was the time when it all of a sudden clicked?
Well, you have to keep in mind that I went to my first drag strip in 1958. You weren't even here then. I'm sure. You sound like a pretty young guy. I went to my first national event. The first one I went to, I won. Let me take that back. That's not actually the first. That was in 1971. I attended an NHRA national event in 68, so I can't claim that the first one was the first win. But little did we know back then what this whole thing was going to turn into. I started out as a street racer because I was I hated school. I didn't really have any direction. My mom was a great lady that worked hard just to take care of her two girls. My father was ridiculous. He was. It's hard to describe what he was, but anyhow, I spared him when I sat with the writers for the movie because I didn't want to embarrass my wonderful mother, who is going to be 99 years old here.
Wow.
Shortly, 99. She doesn't know who I am or anything. She's in a nursing home, but she was always wonderful.
So was your dad around?
Well, he died when he was 49.
Okay.
He basically, my sister, I have an older sister. I'm still the baby of the family, and Linda and I, she's a year and a half older than I am. And she's entirely different than I am. She's low-key. She's wonderful. Never had a bad day with my sister, Linda, in our entire lives. Up to this point, she was an A student. She was 5'9", great looking, very easy on the eyes. The great legs. She had it all. I was the skinny, hated school. Didn't have much going for me. Just two entirely different kids, but. I didn't. School wasn't what I was interested in, so I didn't pay attention much. I think I was. Is the word? Am I saying it right? A little dyslexic.
Sure. Yeah.
No concentration whatsoever. Didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I just. I was in my junior year in high school, and I only got there because the teachers passed me to get rid of me. And but I would caught a glimpse of a guy who had this great car, 51 Mercury, and this thing was, it would sit idle outside the school, and I'd go, oh, God, what a great car. A guy named Jack and went to work in a car hop restaurant about 1.5 miles from where I lived. And he would give me a ride home from work at night. And instead of going straight home, we would go look for street races, drag races, up and down State Street in Schenectady, New York. And that's how it all began. And he taught me how to drive. We were very close. I married. He was 19. I was 16. My father, just to get rid of me, my father gave me permission to get married. A year and a half later, we had a young son, John, and John would go to the drag strip with us, and that was our form of recreation. We raced the car. I drove to work, and I worked for $1 an hour plus tips. Jack was a mechanic and a wonderful body man. He had very talented, had just a knack for making it perfect. And he was a good worker, a great worker. We got along fairly. We didn't have a bad life at all. But he began to drink. It ran in his family. His father was a slumped over the table, drunk, slobbering drunk, every night of his life. At least when I was around, I know, and it just ran in the family. Jack, and he rarely went to work, but Jack was a worker. And but anyhow, in 1971, I met Coletta. I decided that was, that I was going to make a change in my life, and I left Schenectady and moved to Detroit. Jack and I stayed friendly. We did. We stayed friendly all those years. My son came with me. I was the only child I ever had, and John grew up around the drags. That's all I did. That my whole life was drag racing. Do you know how to play Scrabble? No. Well, I never learned how to play Scrabble. Have you ever been to a football game? No. Basketball? No. I never enjoyed any of the things that normal kids enjoy growing up, and just it was all the drags. That was my life. I raced to work. I raced home from work. There wasn't anything that had my interest but being at the drags. And some of these racetracks were death traps. Wasn't smart enough to realize the peril I was putting myself in. But it was, I went a lot of places, multiple times, met a lot of people, had a lot of fun. I think I had a great life in the sport. It didn't secure my future. I'm sitting at my age here with what I acquired, throughout my career, and it does not include a pension or anything. It just NHRA never provided anything like that. We depended on our souvenir sales, which before the new regime came into the sport, we weren't allowed to take advantage of. So there was a lot of clawing and scratching and digging to keep your head above the waterline in the early years, the 70s, the 80s, even into the 90s. But I left the sport in 91 because I had no sponsorship. So I went out on the road and went back to invitationals and match races. And because of my name and my history and my fan following, I made more money from 91 until I went back in 2000 because I found some funding. I made more money then in that period of time than I made in my entire career, including the World Championship wins.
Wow.
So the
I'm
next.
trying to condense this.
No.
I'm really trying to condense this. I've been a lot of places a lot of times. I just can't fit it all into a tiny little niche for you. But
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you the way it was. My fan following is what keeps me alive today. I have the wonderful, wonderful fan following, and look, I have 90. I'm not a techie type person. Mm-hmm. I haven't even mastered my 5 phone yet. Mm-hmm. I've had it for 2 years, but I'm getting there. I have to have my next door neighbor come over and help me when my computer freezes up because I pressed the wrong buttons. But it's just there's a lot of things I could learn at my age that teenagers have mastered with their eyes closed. So the techie world is not, it's just something I can't keep up with, and that's what it takes nowadays.
It moves so fast.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. But, it's funny you said when the first thing we talked about, that's why, there isn't an abundance of young people going into, the sport, aspiring drivers or mechanics or whatever. Not a lot, like there used to be, because they've got their faces stuck in these little machines, and that's, I don't think that's probably the best thing for the sport, really, because it's computerized. A lot of the running of the car, the driving of the cars now. I mean, they are not nearly as challenging as they were when I started out and went, the first 20 years of my career.
Sure. So what is question? The second question we ask everybody is, what do you miss the most, or what is there a period of time that you miss?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every day of my life, I'm the worst spectator now out there. It's when they say, okay, let's go, and they turn that motor over. That's what I miss the most. The driving of the car. I did it I was in Nitro 33 years. And over the years, hundreds of people, good drivers, really good drivers, have come and gone like the wind. I mean, they just disappear from the sport. The cost of it is the devil, and it just rules the sport, and it's hard to stay on top of it and be competitive, safe, and and look good. But you got to have good people too, not just good equipment. You got to have people that know what the heck they're doing. Not everyone was a Jack Muldowney, but we have, because of the parts and the manufacturers and what they, what's available to the racers today, and just what they've learned over the years. You learn by trial and error. The cars are so wonderful. They're wonderful to watch. They're wonderful to hear. They're wonderful to drive. They're just fantastic race cars. You can tell I'm a big fuel fan. I look at a NASCAR car and it does nothing for me. Zero. Does nothing for me. I mean, it's okay. I mean, they're like cookie cutter cars.
Sure.
Our cars are, it's an all-out machine. It's excuse the expression. I don't know how else to say. It's balls to the wall. It's everything on the line. One strike and you're out. No second chance. It is, it's, you better be good at it, or because you will fade very, very fast. And I think right now, with the crop of drivers that we have, There's a lot of them that, not a lot, I should take that back. There are some that probably shouldn't be out there, because these cars are so impressive, and they're so dependable and easy to drive and spectacular that they make you look. You can go from a zero to a hero. You've heard that before. Mm-hmm. They can make a young driver that doesn't know much look really good, fast.
So what's the difference, I guess, between one of those people and someone who's truly competitive, or who's someone who?
Well, the difference is, truthfully, the people working on the car. You gotta have you gotta have. These guys they're more almost more competitive than the drivers, the crew chiefs. But one person, first of all, they're overpaid. They're making Alan Johnson. I mean, John Force's daughter in the top fuel car. She wasn't hitting her duff with both hands. Couldn't even get it down the racetrack. Mainly, her reaction times were ghastly. The car wasn't even close to competitive. Well, John Force stepped up and hired Alan Johnson, the Wizard of Oz in drag racing. I mean, he's a pretty sharp guy, and builds his own parts and everything. I mean, John Force hired him for $1 million, just $1 million a season. And he flies in his own jet, and when he leaves and goes home, he takes the clutch and the injector system, fuel system, takes it off the car and takes it with him. That way, the other 3 teams that John Force has can't, during the week, go over and dip into Alan's car and see how he runs his show. Huh. That's the kind of ego that's involved here. But, if I was Alan Johnson, I'd do the same darn thing. Yeah. So it takes a lot to you could be on top of the world, win the championship sew up the championship at a particular race, and go to the next event and be a DNQ. Yeah. That's how unpredictable these cars are. The atmospheric conditions have a whole lot to do with how the setup is. And I mean, Sonoma, California is far from Maple Grove, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. The conditions. So that's what they deal with, and our people they went to bed really stupid in terms of back a couple decades ago, and they woke up really smart. They are really, really good. I mean, it's just amazing. This Jimmy Prock. Jimmy Prock works on, whose car does he work on? Oh my God, Beckman. He's on Jack Beckman's car. Beckman's a pretty good driver too, but that's a Don Schumacher car. But Jimmy Prock, I mean, I gave him a ride home when he was a little boy, 12 years old. He rode home from Indy in my crew cab, after the race, because he had to get back to Detroit to go to be ready for school the next day. I mean, and here he is. He's the man on top of the world right now. Yeah. And I look back at those years, and it's just amazing to me what these second generation racer people have done with what was available to them. So, pretty impressive.
So the next question kind of actually follows pretty well from there.
Am I doing okay, or am I?
You're doing so great. Yeah, no, this is really, really good stuff. And the next question is, could you do what you did if you started out today?
I could drive that car with my eyes closed, my friend. I've got a lot of rides under my belt. A lot of rides under a lot of different conditions. And when I did it, you got to keep in mind, I did it when it wasn't what it is. I did it when the tracks were dark, narrow, short. But when I got into it, heavy. You couldn't stretch your elbows at the fence because there were that many people in the pits.
Yeah.
And I see today, it's, you know, they struggle to fill the stands.
Sure.
And, you know, and I don't know what's, you know, other than these little machines that these kids carry around and bury their heads in. You know, it can't be that. It just can't be that interesting where we shouldn't have, you know, they shouldn't be standing there in droves looking for a way to get into the sport. Yeah. I know why. It's the cost of it. It's the cost of the toys and what we do. And the racers are just as guilty of making that happen as the manufacturers and the sanctioning bodies and all of that. It's just, and I don't know what they're going to do other than, well, they use a lot of excuses, but slow the cars down. They're too fast. You know, we slow them down. They won't be as expensive. And, you know, so they have shortened the racetrack. Mm-hmm. They've chopped off 320 feet of real estate. So there's, you know, if you got to gather somebody, you have a little miscue and you got to gather somebody up half track, you don't have enough room to catch them to win the race now. Or and they've, you know, there's a lot of, you know, they've automated the cars somewhat, and it's just a different world.
So
and it's corporate. It's all corporate. You know, I used to like to see a couple guys roll in the dirt at the end of the racetrack. I mean, that's when it was racing. You know, now you frown at somebody, you got a $5,000 fine.
Sure. So would you say that it's that kind of culture, or is it really the money? So, you know, if you were starting out today, it's the cost.
Yeah. The cost, well, yeah. I mean, I tried after I left in 2003. My last ride was November the 9th, 2003. And that particular weekend was the World Finals in Pomona. That was, you know, a race that I attended. I had a 5-race deal with a manufacturer who was a close friend of mine, a very wealthy man, and he paid my way to 5 events. That was he wrote a check for $600,000.
Wow!
And that year, I took home $30,000 pay that year. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it wasn't making me rich, but the car just eats it up. And of course, I had to do it kind of haphazard. I had all come on, Shirley, volunteers. My crew were people that had worked for me 20 years ago. You know, worked for me at some time in my career. We brought a lot of them together, and I'd fly two from Seattle, 1 from Colorado, 2 from LA, 1 from Florida. So I'd bring 6 guys in. There's about $5,000 in plane flights, and I would slip them $1,000.
Sure.
And make it work. Yeah, they leave their families, they leave their jobs, and they go get on an airplane and fly across the country, you know, and go to the drags with Shirley. Yeah. But I would go into Englishtown on a Wednesday night and pack that place. Literally pack that place.
So that was our talk with Shirley Muldowney, and I think this is one of those things where if you had told me prior to working Autoweek that I'd be able to get on the phone and talk to someone like Shirley Muldowney, it would have totally blown me away. And I think having this conversation, obviously, I think, you know, something to note about this generally, and this is maybe a little bit too behind the curtain, but when we started this project out, we had this really clear interview format where we're asking questions. So I think a few of these interviews you're going to hear kind of follow a format. I don't think that's necessarily the way we're going to go in the future now that this podcast is kind of growing and we're kind of seeing where it's going to end up. But I think she's someone who we definitely have to have back on the show for a more in-depth conversation. I feel like we barely scratched the surface with that interview, and there's so much more that she has to say. So next, We're going to talk a little bit about what we're driving, what's in the Autoweek fleet right now, and then maybe we can start off a little bit with where we've been traveling. I have personally been traveling to the New York Auto Show, where we saw the Dodge Demon. Obviously, I think that's the story coming out of there. 840 horsepower.
With an asterisk.
That's
840 on 100 octane unleaded, quote unquote race gas. We all know real race gas is leaded, but
we all know that.
yeah, that's,
obviously.
That's also with.
Wait, my Pontiac takes leaded gas. Does that mean my Pontiac's a race car?
Well,
Yeah,
it's tuned for race gas.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, compared to what we have now, it's also with a different ECU. It's with a different center stack. It's with
Which is
different
optional,
tires.
right? The new ECU comes with the Demon crate, which is an optional
Yeah.
extra, so that it won't run off race gas from the factory.
But
You can put 100
all
octane in it. But it's
3,300
worthless.
people who are
They
gonna
get
buy
the,
this
they get
car.
the
Yeah.
crate.
Wait, they do get it,
I believe so.
or is it optional? Because I thought it was
I
optional.
think it's a forced option.
Okay.
Something to look into. We'll get the research department on that one.
Why wouldn't you get the crate?
Right,
Why
I was going to say, if you're buying this car and you're like, well, I'm going to save a couple bucks, and that's not ever going to happen. So it doesn't matter whether it's a forced option or everyone's getting the crate.
There's a lot of. I would assume that these are the cars that in 30 years or 40 years we'll be looking at Barrett Jackson's, be like, oh, it's a equivalent to a
10
Hemi,
years,
a Hemi Cuda.
Whatever. Yeah, and that's why they're doing it.
A price on this thing?
Well, we have a bet going on the price.
I said between 80 and 100,000. The Hellcat's 65, 70, so it can't be way higher than that. So I said between 80 and 100.
I went 100 to 120,
And Rory took the over.
I took the over.
which looking back seems a little high.
Right. Well, I think not a fair idea. He gets 120 to $1 million,
Yeah.
and I have 80.
So
to
if it's
100.
a million,
This
I
is
win.
not counting dealer markups, which these are obviously, if they aren't already sold, going to be marked up. To
Oh,
the
yeah.
nines.
No,
To the nth degree.
but I think this is obviously a great idea. Every car should have at least 700 horsepower, so this is a step I think in the right direction. For me personally, I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't see any world in which this doesn't make sense. We're all talking about Dodge. We're all talking about a car with a platform that's older than Wesley.
That's true.
That is actually true.
And it's the car doesn't suffer for having that old platform, I don't think. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do. It obviously doesn't twist apart with 840 horsepower coming out of it. So I think that's a pretty good start.
Yeah,
I already talked to
The Hellcat is, I would say, eminently drivable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
drivable on the street.
Easy
drivable.
to drive.
I mean,
would say.
not terrible at all. So I mean, add another 15% horsepower and
Fine.
still probably drivable.
Yep.
I'm concerned about those DOT approved drag radials. I don't know what those are going to feel like on the street. Will it corner at all?
It doesn't have to. Jesus, the other one doesn't corner.
That's why it personally does not excite me, because I like cornering.
I like
Forward and
destroying tires.
backwards G's don't do much for me. It's the lateral G's that I like.
I like the smoke, and I like being able to turn like a whole set of tires into smoke instantaneously.
You're a piker.
I like that.
I'm absolutely a white trash at heart.
Same, but I like that Dodge is stepping out of its own comfort zone and building a car that essentially no one else would build, because no one can see money in it besides.
I mean, I think this is kind of Dodge's thing. Like,
Well, in the news, like you said,
yeah, I mean,
everyone's
I
talking
think
about it.
Chevy's going to go out and build a ZL1 that's going to be a dominant track car. Ford's going to do the same thing and try to build a
GT500.
GT350R, GT500 that's going to be a dominant track car. And Dodge has a platform that's older, and they can stuff it with a ton of power. And
It
So
lifts its
why
wheels.
is the
It lifts all 400
why is the
pounds
Demon
of
going to be a bigger deal than, say, like the Viper, which was also the ultimate track car?
do 200 more horsepower. No, it's
The
not.
Viper was a huge deal.
Yeah, it's not
It
that
was
it's
on Married with Children for Pete's sake.
it's not that it's not that it's a bigger deal. It's just
Not enough people bought them.
Dodge wants a Halo car. I mean, and this is the Halo car. I mean, I think the Viper has its own drawbacks, especially if you're over, say, 5'4".
Or
Yeah.
don't want to cook in a cabin.
No, I'm
No.
5'10", and I drove it.
No,
fine.
the Viper's great. Anyone who says the Viper's bad is a bad person. And
No,
deserves
I've driven
not
on
to
the
have
track. I've driven on the street.
It's a great car.
It's good.
It's fantastic.
And I think they
It does have some ergonomic drawbacks
Yeah,
that
and
maybe
it does
keep
get-
people who can. Yeah, I mean, I think older people who can afford a car like that, you're kind of in a difficult spot where it's like, okay, you can get a Z06, that you can sit in very comfortably and take across country if you're an older fella. Or you can get a Viper, which is an incredible track car, a lot of fun. I think all those people who wanted that car probably bought them. It's just there aren't a lot of those people. But I think that you have to get the Dodge thing, the Demon. I was just talking to Killer Mike, huge car guy,
friend of Autoweek,
friend of the magazine, Killer Mike. Yeah. He just bought a Hellcat 3 weeks ago, and so I heard this Demon stuff coming up, and I heard the power figure, and I was like, shit, I wonder if Mike's gonna get rid of the Hellcat and get a Demon. And he said, no, I'm gonna get a Hellcat. I'm gonna keep the Hellcat and then buy a Demon. And it's like, that's
the move.
Yeah, that exactly. Yeah. No, yeah.
I can barely afford lunch.
Yeah, no, but you're not touring 280 days a year or whatever.
It's Dodge's perfect customer. They'll get the SRT8, then the Hellcat, then the Demon,
and then the Trackhawk, which also debuted in Europe.
I think the whole point of this car, they're going to sell $3,300 of them. I don't know what their margin is on it. This is not something that is making or breaking their bottom line at the end of the year, but we're all coming out of the New York Auto Show talking about Dodge.
And we actually been talking about it for 2 months leading up to it.
3 months.
3 months, because Dodge was, letting out small teases once a week. We learned, once about its trans brake, and then once about its DOT drag radials, and once about
played
its
us
wheels
good.
Lifting off the ground.
Imagine they played us like a fiddle. With
but it makes me. It makes people are excited to read about it.
Well,
so I have no problem.
I'm excited to read about.
Talk about the Ford GT. Same thing. They built a couple dozen of those things,
right?
And we've been talking about that thing for 2 years.
Yeah, loving it.
That's something that's like website candy. You put that on the website.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Guaranteed.
I just imagine being on Woodward in 4 lanes of traffic and just lifting the wheels up on it. Like how crazy would be sitting next to somebody in a Challenger, like, huge, wow, sweet Challenger. Also, like, what? And the front wheels come off the ground.
To be fair, we saw that again in Fast and the Furious 8.
We did see that.
We saw 4
comes back.
Incredible. Yeah. So I think that obviously the only thing I can say that's bad about the Demon is no training wheels and no parachute. I don't know why. If you're gonna have a crate full of stuff to put with the car, maybe there's a liability issue where you don't want to inflate a parachute on the road. I don't know.
But to be fair, it's not anywhere near fast enough for a shoot.
But it's cool.
And it would be cool to let it go on the street in front of the car behind you.
It's cool to drive around with a parachute on the back of your car.
Actually, what if it automatically retracted back, so you didn't have to stuff it back?
The coolest way to do it would be
it's on a winch. You just wheels itself back in.
Tie it into a pressure port on the supercharger, so if it backfires with a supercharger like in a top fuel car, it pops a chute. That's the cool way. Now we're cooking with gas.
That's a reasonable, smart thing. Anyway, so speaking of FCA products, Wesley, you were just out in Mobab.
Mobab, the mother of all Jeep bombs.
Yeah. That if you guys didn't, that was why the word Moab. You saw it trending on Twitter about a week ago. There was a Easter Jeep Safari in Moab, Utah. That's why it was in the news.
Yeah,
that everybody was kind of talking about last year.
It's a big deal. It was on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC.
It's all anybody would talk about, this Moab thing. But tell us why it was such a big story.
Jeeps crawling over stuff.
Are there any non-Jeeps out there anymore? Is it all Jeeps?
Absolutely. I was with the people at Best Top, and at their like little.
Who's Best Top?
Best Top is the OE supplier of Jeep soft tops, and they're also a leading Jeep aftermarket supplier.
Sponsor of the show, major sponsor of the show. We should mention.
But they're more than just Jeeps. They're predominantly, and surprisingly, a lot of not the new, because that's coming out soon, but the most recent model of Wrangler, the JK, as Jeep enthusiasts call it. A ton of those outnumber almost everything, more than YJs, CJs, and TJs.
Yeah, of course.
Which are previous generation Wranglers. The sad story from my trip of
you can't really call a CJ a Wrangler.
True.
Anyway,
yeah.
Yes. The Jeep guys are gonna write you letters.
I'm pretty sure there's a death threat coming in right now.
Anyway, sorry.
Wesley went in care of Autoweek at 1155 Grant Street, Detroit, Michigan, 48207.
Social Security number. No. So on this trail, we went to some park, and we were on a trail called Green Day, and this freshly painted XJ Square Cherokee on like 37s, a mile lift. Like it was a beautiful, super clean XJ. May or may not have toppled over. It was so sad. It was a brand new build, and the dude was so bummed.
That's fun to watch.
Shattered windshield. I saw some pictures.
Shattered windshield, messed up top. I mean,
Were you okay? Were you okay, Wesley?
I was weeping. It wasn't my Jeep though. No, I wasn't driving. Flipped it over, fired it right up. He continued to drive it. It's a good. Yeah, it's a Jeep thing. Most people wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, Moab was if you get a chance. Also, Moab's just a gorgeous.
The stock Jeep Wrangler is so amazing. I mean, we went out there a couple of years ago. Stock Wranglers tackled, I think, the hardest trails. I could not imagine any trails harder than this. I mean,
At a certain point, the stock Rubicon's tires would limit you. So you need 37s or.
But also, all the stuff underneath is ready to be bashed. It's
ready to be bashed.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll never forget that. One of the first press trips I ever went on, I did the Rubicon Trail for the 10th anniversary of Jeep Rubicon, and like the first time you pull up to an obstacle and then hang up the entire frame on it, and I look over at the Jeep PR guy, and it's like, you hear this terrible sound of like metal being rended against stone, and it's like. Is this cool? He's like, oh no, that's just how this is. Like, it's going to be like that all week.
Yep.
You're going to be dragging differentials all week.
I had the same thought. Yes,
but to Jake's point, you're in the car, and you look at an obstacle, and it's like absolutely not, no way, never in a million years is this gonna.
A few minutes later, you're sitting on top of it.
Yeah, or looking in your rearview mirror. I'll never forget going through, and I mean, you can't see this here, so going between two.
You gotta paint a picture with your words.
Between two monster boulders in the woods toward the I guess middle half of the Rubicon Trail, and looking at it, you're sitting there with the Jeep pointed at it, and it's narrower than the body of the Jeep, and you're supposed to put a wheel up on one and then put another wheel up on the other, and you kind of like twist the Jeep through the obstacle, and it's like, hey, I can't believe they're doing this, because if I fuck this up, there's no way to recover this car. Like we get a helicopter,
or quite possibly you.
Yeah, right. But then everyone just like a bunch of amateur journalists who can't drive for shit, as we all know, just
non-present
come through the other side.
Present company is clear.
It's insane. All right, so what else? Jake, have you been anywhere interesting lately?
I drove the Ionic recently, but I'm going to drive the 911 GT3 in Spain next week. I am friggin' pumped about this. I mean, if you guys have been online, in my bio, it says the Nissan GTR, Mustang GT350, 911 GT3, my three favorite all-time cars. So I am understandably pumped about this. It's going to have a manual, 500 horsepower. The GT3 is like the stripped-down, tracky, racy version. I don't know if we had a new one. I drove one back in like 2011, and it was then the funnest car I had ever driven. And I'm hoping this one will be better. I'm sure it will.
Funnest is the same as most fun, just for anyone who's listening.
Yes, it was the funnest though. It was the funnest.
English.
I'm very excited about that. I don't know what track we're going to. I know
it's in Spain though, right?
Yeah, we're going to Madrid. So I'll be Circuit de Jerez or Jerez. I'm not sure how you say it. So I'll be looking at some hot lap videos to learn the tracks and try to prep for it.
Will you be playing on the PS?
They don't, as far as I know, they don't have Jerez on the games I currently have. Although I did get an email from Sony, which I'm super pumped about. I'm going to be in on the Gran Turismo Sport Beta, which should be happening in a week or two. So go to Autoweek.com for my review of that within a few weeks. I'm very excited.
How many hours do you think? What's a reasonable amount of time to spend on that game in like the first week? Would you say?
The first week.
Is this more than a full work week? More than 40 hours?
I don't. It's. I can't even judge these days. I got an 10-month-old at home, so my my hours of video game playing are over. But even with that, I could see myself putting in 10 to 20 hours in the first week.
Jesus Christ, that's insane.
It's the first Gran Turismo on the PS4 platform, so it should be gorgeous. And I got a brand new Logitech wheel to use with it. So
as a serious gamer, that makes absolutely no sense to me. Mm-hmm. So be blessed. Enjoy the 20 hours of driving virtually.
I hope they have that track on there. That'd be a happy accident.
Wow, incredible. All right, so Wesley, you've been. Is that Moab was kind of the highlight? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Moab was basically the one place I've been in a minute, but the highlight of my year so far.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy to see all these, and it's what I like the most is it's not just full tilt crawler Jeeps. There's a few buggies and whatnot, but a lot of it's a very mixed group of people, like a vast assortment of Jeeps and other vehicles.
What other kind of Broncos?
A couple first in Broncos,
Land Rovers.
I didn't see
Defender,
I didn't see Defender, which makes sense. I mean, those are pricey over here. I saw a weird new generation Colorado with the doors cut out of it on like crawl suspension with big rubber. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
with a weird skeletal spine.
I was
such
going
as
to
a
say,
brontosaurus.
like a cage around it.
No, just cosmetic brontosaurus, stegosaurus spine on the roof, which I thought was stupid.
Oh yeah,
But
that's
the
cool.
suspension
Actually,
poking through the hood was cool.
that's good. All right, so in the fleet now, what are we driving?
So I brought with me today some information on the Dodge Challenger GT. We were just talking about the Demon, which is the sweetest Challenger. Now we have the V6 equipped all-wheel drive GT that we're actually driving right now.
Is that good? Is that a car you show up and buy?
The problem is this with the V6 Challenger. That V6 is a great engine, that Pentastar.
The Pentastar is fantastic.
But it doesn't sound like it belongs in a Challenger, and it's still pretty damn heavy, so it doesn't shove it around. I mean, it doesn't feel as fast. Even with the Chrysler 200 sedan, feels faster than this Challenger, I think.
And so anyway, we'll be here again in 2 weeks, and I hope to have some people tuning in.
Rate us on iTunes.
Rate us.
If we can ever get on iTunes.
Get us up rated really highly on iTunes. We'll be back. We'll promise we will do better next time. We'll have sound effects. We'll have better theme music, and we'll have the little rap air horn. It's going to be great. So we will see you in 2 weeks on the Autoweek Podcast.